Welcome to our candidate interviews, in which I will bring the candidates for town office directly to your home. Today's interview is brought to you by LakeCAM, which runs Lakeville's public education and government access television stations. My name is Joanne Corriere-Upham, and I will be interviewing the two candidates running for planning board this year. The questions have been compiled by Katie Goodfollow, our town moderator, and myself by reviewing past debates along with questions submitted recently by town residents. And today we have David Lodge as our guest. And I'm going to welcome you, Mr. Lodge, to having an interview. I appreciate you coming and spending your time with me. Would you please share with our voters a bit about yourself and your reasons for wanting to run for planning board?
Well, I spent my career as an architect here in Massachusetts and in the Midwest, and have experience building all over the eastern half of the United States.
Ooh.
And a project in Canada as well. However, at this point now, I am fully retired, so I'm not looking to turn this this activity into more profit. It's more kind of time for me to give back. My experience as an architect, I've been involved in projects much like the one that was going to be presented last night here in the library.
Oh, Rocky Woods.
Where there was nearly 200 people here. I can't say that I've gone through that. My projects have always been the sort that have sailed through, because I know how to deal with boards.
Okay.
From sitting on the other side, and now
And presenting.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So now I feel like I am experienced on that side of the table, and know how to run things from the other side of the table too.
Oh, good.
I kind of believe that projects have to go in the place where they belong. So there's some projects that don't belong where they're proposed to be.
Okay.
And this one's one of them.
Okay. I'm just going to ask you one question. How long have you been in Lakeville?
I've been in Lakeville just shy of 4 years now.
Okay. Because some of our audience probably are dying to know what that question.
I grew up in Walpole, so I'm though I may try to call myself a native New Englander, I do have Midwest roots as well. So
okay.
I've got
nothing wrong with that.
I've got experience in other areas of the country as well.
Okay, well, good. All right, first question. The Lakeville Planning Board is responsible for ensuring that new land development meets both state and local zoning regulations. How do you see the planning board working with the current Lakeville Master Plan 2020 as it is written?
I'd have to say I haven't run through the details of the current master plan. I know the state is pushing many towns and particularly in this area, mm-hmm. in directions that they may not want to go. Mm-hmm. There's going to be, I think there's going to be a fight about that. Mm-hmm. That the state has a kind of a more urban outlook on things that towns like Lakeville are not ready to absorb.
There you go. Mm-hmm. So it's something you would, in other words, you got to look more into the master plan and see what the state wants and what we want.
Yeah.
And you're going with what we want. That's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. As I've looked at what the state wants, like I just said, it's more of an urban outlook on things, mm-hmm. and the Great Woods project, for instance, or Rocky Woods, is an interesting example of that, where you're building a great number of housing units kind of as far away from the train station and as far away from downtown as possible. And that's not really what you want to do. If you're going to build multifamily housing, apartments and such, that really belongs closer to your commercial center than
Way over
as
there.
far out as that is. I mean, I remember looking at, there's I think it was a former nursing home
Oh yeah, Island Terrace.
property. No, it's up on a hill overlooking the lake.
The water, yeah, that was Island Terrace.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, nice piece of property, nice project there, but it's so far from everything.
Yes,
And,
it is.
And particularly when you're marketing it, I think that's marketed to over 55s.
It is, I believe, too.
You're going to have a lot of people there that eventually aren't going to be driving, and they're miles from anything. So, though it's a very nice project, I don't know that it belonged being an over 55 project, just as an aside sort of thing. So I believe in kind of the right projects for the right locations.
Okay. Next question. What do you see as the biggest challenges for the town in the next 3 to 5 years when it comes to new land development and possible large pieces of land that may come up for sale for the town to purchase?
Well, the town already went through trying to purchase Lakeville Country Club, and that didn't go anywhere, primarily because the Board of Selectmen didn't want to encumber the town. So that might be a tough road unless the selectmen change their attitude about it. It was voted overwhelmingly to pass the override for it by a 2-to-1 margin, if I recall right. So I think the town is in favor of it. Whether or not the town, when they start looking at the dollars that it costs, can afford to do some of that is another thing. I think that our zoning ordinance needs a good look at to make sure that some of those particularly the outlying pieces of land in the town, aren't developed kind of to higher densities. We need to keep the lower densities, and it's a rural town. It ought to be maintained as a rural town. Despite I always throw out the fact of the population of the United States when I was born was about 150 million, and now it's over 330 million, which is more than double, and you got to put those people somewhere.
Exactly.
So places like Lakeville have grown. They're growing faster than the state. The last time I looked, the state's population in the last 10 years was up 6%, but Lakeville's was up 17%.
Wow, that's an interesting statistic.
Yeah. Yeah, so Lakeville has to be aware that there's a lot of pressure on it to develop. People want to move out.
Okay. All right. Next question. The planning board recently voted unanimously to make a recommendation to the zoning board of appeals that they deny the permit of Rocky Woods, as it would devastate the integrity of the property, which is significant to the Wampanoag tribe, as well as grounds, which are not favorable for building due to wetlands, traffic concerns, and water resources. Given the challenges we're facing with the new MBTA community mandates and drains on the community resources such as schools, fire, and police, what is your stance on dense cluster housing in affordable 40B housing developments that are being brought forth by developers? What will you do as a planning board member to preserve Lakeville's character? Sort of what you've been getting at.
I don't have a huge problem with 40B development or the MBTA mandated developments. However, they belong in our more developed, our more commercial areas of town. And I think that, as a for instance, to kind of identify an area, the area between 495 and the Star Liquor Store will be where Lakeville will kind of naturally develop a commercial area, and any multifamily housing or high density housing should be in that area. The hospital property is prime for something like that, whereas Rocky Woods, being so far away, one, that doesn't fit the MBTA mandate because it's too far from the train station.
Train station, yeah.
And yes, I've already taken a stand that the Rocky Woods property is property that shouldn't really ever be developed, at least not in any sort of high density manner. If you wanted to subdivide it into lots that were 5 acres apiece or so, that might work, aside from historic sites or natural Native American sites.
Right.
So that would kind of fit the again what I've been saying about the right projects for the right locations.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Next question. As a planning board member with a 5-year commitment, do you have any financial interests or conflicts of interest with any business in town?
None. I don't anticipate, or actually, if I was offered any business opportunities in town, I would turn them down.
Okay.
In part because, like I said at the beginning, I call myself retired at this point. I've done in the last 4 years, I've done 2 projects. One was in mid coast of Maine, and the other was in Florida. So, in terms of doing projects locally, not really interested.
Okay.
Not going to happen.
Okay. Next question. Proposed on the warrant for the annual town meeting this year is the open space residential design bylaw, which is being called OSRD. Are you in support of this type of cluster zoning? Why or why not?
I would have to say that I'm not familiar with that particular proposal or that particular warrant.
Okay.
In general, I am in favor of cluster zoning because of the ways that it can preserve open space.
Yeah, that's sort of what this is. It's providing, I think it's a 25-acre area that would be around whatever they would be building as cluster, so they would keep it as open space around the edges.
Too oftentimes, the cluster zoning regulations are written poorly, so that you end up with open space which kind of amounts to, in some cases, like a 25-foot or a 50-foot buffer all the way around the property.
I think that's what this is.
So the open space then is so divvied up that it doesn't look like there's any open space.
Yeah. I haven't specifically read the bylaw myself, but that's my understanding. It has something to do with the buffer around.
Yeah, generally, those buffers are so small that they're inconsequential. I can give an example of a project that I was involved in way back in the 80s in Walpole, which was the town I grew up in. There was an estate. It was the Dutton estate of Dutton Publishing. And it sat right on the Walpole-Medfield border, but the side that was in Walpole got subdivided. Now, the normal way a subdivision would be done would be to blast a street through there and do houses fronting on the street. But this piece of property had a meadow that faced 27 that as a kid I drove by all the time. A meadow with a woodlot behind it and some hills. The way the development happened there is no longer legal because they're what are called pork chop lots. They put in 14 lots, all had frontage on Route 27, and the house lots, the buildable area of the lots, were all back in the woods. So as you drive by there today, the only difference between what it looked like in 1960 and what it looks like today is a driveway that runs back into the woods and a sign that indicates the subdivision. Nothing else. And it is a driveway. It's not a 60-foot right-of-way or anything else. It runs across everybody's alley that runs back to their lot. So there are easements given back and forth amongst everything. It's pretty. It didn't alter the appearance of that area
And that's what they were going for?
at all, and that's what they were going for.
Interesting.
I did the first house in there, and the first house sits on a hill. You can barely see it from the street, even in the wintertime.
Interesting.
And the odd thing about the house is that the side that faces 27, and it is back a distance, it's across the meadow and into the trees, is actually the back of the house, but it looks like your normal two-story colonial on that side.
Interesting.
So it's almost kind of a joke that the big Palladian window and the door underneath the Palladian window is the basement door. The front of the house is around the other side.
Oh, wow, interesting.
When we designed it, it was one of the bigger houses built at the time. It was 3,000 square feet, and the question was, could we build a 3,000 square foot house in Walpole and sell it for $300,000? And the developer built it, sat on it for 9 months, almost a year, and sold it for $375,000.
Wow.
So he actually got more.
Yeah. Wow. Pretty good story with a good ending.
Yes, yes. But it's one of those things. We've outlawed that method of developing land for reasons that aren't necessarily valid, and I'd like to see more flexibility in land development so that we do our best to use the land in its best way. So we scar it as little as possible. So we do as little tree cutting as possible. Mm-hmm. And our current...
Personally, I hate going by a lot that you see beautiful trees and all of a sudden the whole thing, because it's easier for the builders to have it all out of the way.
Right.
I'm with you on that.
We do a subdivision first by
stripping the land.
And doing a 60-foot wide right-of-way with sidewalks on both sides and so on. And that isn't always necessary.
No, I agree. And then they plant trees after.
And we have places here in town, I hate to pick on individual locations, but it's a recent construction is the dollar store on Main Street. There's no trees on that property. They just stripped it bare. I mean, and even if it was bare before there was any construction on it, if the planning board had required that they do some landscaping,
it would look nicer.
It would look a whole lot nicer. The other thing is the parking lot's too big. There's parking for more than double the number of cars that are ever there.
Oh, I know. I've seen it full a few times.
Well, but there's parking down around the sides.
Yeah, there is not on the sides. Usually in the front is where I see it.
They may fill up the front.
Yeah.
But the sides,
sides.
are empty, and if the parking lot had been reconfigured a little bit more, they could have had more green space out front, some landscaping.
Yeah.
And now you've got something that is an asset to the town rather
Right.
than looking like
The
just
dollar store.
another little strip
Right.
retail
Gotcha.
space.
Yeah.
And that's what I'd like to see the town avoid.
Okay. Okay, last question. There are a few establishments in town where parking is an issue. The planning board does have the authority to issue the number of spaces allowed per establishment if there is a safety issue. Do you feel this is something that the planning board should take up?
Yes, it's funny, we just got done talking about parking at the dollar store. It's going to sound like, I was giving these questions ahead of time. No.
You weren't.
No, I know I wasn't. Yes, a good example of that is CVS. They've got much more parking than they need. I think, but it is something that's hard to foretell. If you're building a retail building, for instance, that doesn't have a specific tenant in mind, and even if it does, in the future there could be a different tenant in there. So your parking requirements may
change.
Yeah. But if you have room for potential future parking if you need it, but reducing the parking requirement is something that
Right.
I
But as a
think should
safety
go on.
issue, if there weren't enough spaces allowed, because this is what we're trying to get at, because there are some places in town that apparently some people are concerned about that don't have enough spaces.
The farm on 105
On Main
where
Street.
people are trying to park on the street, and yes, that becomes a huge safety issue. Yes, there are spots. There are some businesses in town. I think there's one in the industrial park that doesn't have enough parking for their
Spaces.
employees, and it's something that needs to be thought of as buildings are planned.
Or
and again,
readdressed in the future?
yeah, again, I find zoning ordinances limiting in such a manner that creativity is taken away and the ability to be somewhat flexible. I think that's what you have a planning board for, though.
Right.
Is so that you can look at some of these things and say, yeah, you don't need that much parking, or we'd like to see some more landscaping here, so that you can use the land better.
Yeah. Okay, that wraps up the questions for this interview.
Okay.
Would you like to make any couple-minute brief statement about anything you want to talk about or something new?
Well, it struck me just as we were talking about zoning ordinances and the like, that there were three pillars of architecture that were attributed to Vitruvius, who was a Roman architect, and they were firmness, commodity, and delight. And firmness was the building has to stand up, or in the case of developing land, we can't destroy the land so that rainwater washes hillsides away, or we destroy the environment.
Right.
Commodity is it has to fulfill its function. So if you're designing the use of land to fulfill some need, you have to fulfill that need. And then the last one, the delight, is that it should be beautiful.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I think anyone who's building a home wants it to look beautiful because they have to enter it every day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and one of the things that my houses always had if I could possibly do it, is too oftentimes the way we enter our houses is what's the equivalent of the servant's entrance. And so I try to make sure that how a house is arranged is that you enter it and get to enjoy your foyer. You get to enter through your foyer,
Yeah.
even if you're coming in from the garage.
That's a nice way of doing it. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Lodge. I appreciate you taking the time to interview with me so that the citizens
you.
of Lakeville could hear what you have to say. And I want to remind everyone to come out to vote on Monday, April 1st, between noon and 8 p.m. inside Loud Pond Lodge at Ted Williams Camp. Thank you.